Hey guys, this is Miss Benson, and I just wanted to take a minute to share with you a little bit of something that we call shared writing. This is something that we do that just gives our kids a chance to see how we would write a book, the steps and the process that we take. I know that for many of our kids, they like to really focus on a page or two. But the writing that we've been trying to teach them is really all about the process, not necessarily the finished product. And so ideally, a piece of writing might take them a few days or even a week to get to the finished product. So I'm going to kind of talk you through some steps. This might be a multi-part video just because these steps can take a little while, just so that you can kind of see how we show them. Our kids can follow along too. I've got the kind of writing paper that we use at school for some of our writing. But we do like to give kids choice in writing paper. So they can use just notebook paper. They can use white copy paper that's folded. It doesn't have to have a box and lines, but that's just what I have here. So I'm going to start with the most recent kind of writing that we were reviewing at school, which was narrative writing. A narrative is basically any kind of writing that tells a true story about something that happened to you or something that you did. So whenever I get ready to write a narrative, that's the first thing that I want to do is think of my idea of what story I'm going to tell about something that happened to me or something that I did. So we want to make sure that we're steering clear of, make-believe stories or things like that when we're doing our narrative writing. So as I'm thinking through a story about something that happened to me or something that I did, this might be one that we all can kind of relate to. Before I ever write, I want to try to plan through what my writing is going to say. So I do that first by orally rehearsing my book. And then by touching across the pages and planning out what part of my book is going to go on what page. I encourage my class to practice telling their story at least 4 times before they ever write anything. And that's just so that they really get a good picture of what their book is going to say. So my book might go something like, the other day I went to Walmart. And I was doing some grocery shopping. I was looking for bread because I really wanted to make sandwiches for lunches. But when I got to the bread aisle, there was no bread. But luckily, a woman found a couple of loaves smushed back in the back. And so I was able to get a loaf of bread for me to take home. I was very happy. So that would be my first practice of my story. And then I would practice through it again and just say, the other day I went to Walmart. I was looking for bread because I really wanted to make sandwiches. But there was no bread on the bread aisle. But luckily, a woman found a couple of loaves pushed back in the back, and I was able to get one, and I was very happy. So as you can see, my stories don't necessarily have to be word for word exactly the same, but I want to make sure that the main components of my story are the same. So I would practice it again and again. And then I would go through and touch my pages into my story. And this part of my planning just helps me remember what part of my story is going to go on each page. So I might say, I went to Walmart to look for some bread. When I got there, there was no bread on the bread aisle. Luckily, there was a woman there who found some bread pushed back in the back of the shelves. I was able to get a loaf of bread, and I was very happy. So as you can see, I'm actually touching my pages as I'm practicing through my story. I can always add more pages to it if I realize that my book's going to be a little longer. But I want to try to make sure that whatever I'm saying would fit on that page. So that way in my brain, I get used to what part of my story is going to go on what page. So I'm going to practice through my story one more time. I went to Walmart to look for some bread to make sandwiches. But when I got there, there was no bread on the bread aisle. Luckily, a woman found a couple of loaves pushed back to the back of the shelves. I was able to get one loaf of bread, and I was very happy. So now that I've practiced through my story a few times, we do what we call quick sketches. So this is not going to be an exact picture of what my finished work is going to look like. This is just going to be a really quick sketch just to help me remember later what part of my story I said was going to go on each page. So, and forgive my filming, guys. It's kind of hard to hold the camera and do all this at the same time. So we're just going to just bear with me a little bit. So my first page, I'm going to put, I went to Walmart to look for some bread. So I might put, Walmart. Walmart. And we really encourage inventive spelling at this point. So it doesn't necessarily matter if they spell things correctly as long as they're writing the sounds that they hear. So you can see we encourage them to stretch the word out slowly and write the sounds that they hear. And again, this is just going to be kind of a quick sketch. Sorry, guys, I got interrupted by a phone call. So this is going to be a quick sketch. I went to Walmart to look for some bread. And so I'm practicing through as I'm doing my quick sketch. So that way I know what's going to go on each page. And then I got to the bread aisle. Again, just a quick sketch. And there was no bread. And I might write, I'm surprised because there's no bread. And I could put bread aisle. Bread aisle. Just to help me remember, that's me getting to the bread aisle. And there was no bread. Luckily, a woman found some bread pushed back in the back. So I might draw and of course, I can always change this later. This was going to be this woman finding this bread at the back. And I might put a speech bubble here just so, because I remember that she said, here's a couple loaves. I'm not going to write it right now, but I'm going to draw my speech bubble in there so I remember to go back in there and add that later. And at the end of my story, so I was able to get a loaf of bread, and I was happy. So again, just a quick sketch. I'm not coloring. I'm not really adding in anything extra right now. These are just quick sketches. So this is kind of a day one. What I would expect for kids hopefully to do on the first day is basically just to think of their idea, practice telling it several times, and do some quick sketches. So now tomorrow when I come back to this piece of writing, I'll be able to remember how my whole story went. What we find sometimes is that kids will work so hard on their picture for the first day, and they'll have it all fancy and colored. They'll color all over the border, all sorts of stuff. That then when they come back to this writing the next day, and they start to write, they don't remember what was supposed to go on the inside. And so it'll be on a totally different topic than what the original story was. So our goal is to try to help them remember what their story was supposed to say, their narrative story. So that way, when they come back and add things in later, they'll remember how the story was supposed to go. So if you look back through my pictures, I should be able to practice telling my story again, just based on my pictures. So I went to Walmart to look for some bread. When I got to the bread aisle, there was no bread. Luckily, a woman found a couple of loaves of bread pushed to the back. And now I remember because of my speech bubble. She said, I found a couple loaves of bread. I was able to get one loaf of bread, and I was happy. So now tomorrow, when I get back to this piece of writing, I can start adding in some words, and you'll see kind of what a day 2 would look like, hopefully tomorrow. So I hope that makes sense with kind of where we're going with writing and why we do some of the things that we do. But if you have any questions, please feel free to comment down below, and I'll answer any of them that I can. Thanks so much.